And here we are. The design of the specs has stopped, even though we have received designs for balance. Would this be our third, fourth, fifth, 1000 Balance Druid video? Is balance one of the most in need specs of being reworked? Well, we don't know, but what's happening to balance right now is really cool, and a lot of things changed. And the last video that we did kind of went in a little bit into what they promised they would bring into balance and not something that they actually put into the game. But now we have a lot more things to discuss. Like, I'm not kidding. This is like a lot of things. This build that we've had, I think 6-7 hours ago, that was just launched on the beta, has the most amount of changes put into balance, so we couldn't ignore it. And that's what we are bringing to you today. Balance Druid, baby. And listen, if you like these types of videos where we cover pretty much everything, at least everything big that happens to specs on the beta in Dragonflight, so we can get you prepared to know what your main is going to be doing, or what your alt is going to be doing, or what you could respec to, then consider becoming a Patreon, because the Patreon platform is directly supporting the content. I'm not kidding. It actually helps us a lot to be able to do these types of videos on a daily basis, with the help and the support of our dear amazing Patreon contributors. And obviously any little thing can definitely help, and it goes a long way into us being able to give you the best type of quality of the content that we can. And if you do decide to become a Patreon, the link down below, you can check. There's a couple of tiers that you can go to depending on exactly what you want and what your possibilities are, and we do have rewards for each tier, and hope that you will find it worth your time, because we were definitely going to find it worth your time. So thank you very much for supporting us and considering becoming our Patreon. Let's actually talk about Balance Druid. Woo! Alright, listen, I personally had my own problems with balance, mostly related to Starfall, but also in the way that balance is doing AoE, and a lot of things have changed. The general talent tree is kind of the same. Nothing really changed. I think just Star Surge became instant for every druid spec, but that doesn't really affect balance. But let's actually go into the spec tree. As far as the overall changes that happened, there's quite a few, and I'm not going to go too much into everything. Maybe one of the cooler things is to discuss that a lot of the talents have been moved and the rank amounts have been changed, so it doesn't like eat up everything. You have a new talent called Umbral Embrace. Dealing astral damage has a chance to cause your next Wrath or Starfire to become astral and deal 50% additional damage, since, you know, Starfire does arcane damage and Wrath does nature damage. So that's actually really cool. We have the Wild Mushroom new talent, which is something that's been speculated and data mined, I think 2 weeks ago, where you grow a magical mushroom at the target enemy's location, and after 2 seconds the mushroom detonates, dealing nature damage, generating 20 astral power based on the target's hit, and a lot more. You might see some of them on the screen right now, but all of this is really, really cool, and it just brings a lot of breath of fresh air to the actual spec. So let's actually go into the main changes. So first of all, Mark of the Wild has been changed, and although this is not a balance specific thing, it now gives 3% versatility to everybody. So is this how you get druids into raids? I don't know, but if this isn't it, I don't know what is. Eclipse now works as intended. The numbers on the effective spells reset after every eclipse, so it's pretty fair because Eclipse has undergone some changes. And you have 3 paths to take now right from the start, from the first point of the talent tree. Shooting Stars is on the left-hand side, which was previously on the right-hand side. And Warrior of Valloon middle, which you can actually skip if you want to, because you can definitely pass towards the middle from either of the 2 sides. And Starfall is on the right side. I don't know why they were inverse, but hey. And the Stellar Drift has finally removed, and you can finally live your dream of spamming Starfall as multiple times as you will, since they now overlap. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? It's finally happening, and is now in place of Lunar Shrapnel, which increases the damage done to enemies affected by Moonfire. And you also have Ethereal Kindling that goes straight down from Starfall. Casting Starfall extends the duration of active Moonfires and Sunfires. This is basically renamed because this effect was there before, and you know, it helps with multi-dotting in AoE situations. While Lunar Shrapnel at the same time, like I mentioned, makes Starfall deal additional 25% damage to nearby enemies, and especially when they are affected by the Moonfire. So definitely promotes spreading AoE dots And that's something that's kind of been missing for a lot of DPSers. Now on the left-hand side, you will have Solstice really early, which makes during the first 6 seconds of your eclipse, shooting stars fall 100% more often. And of course, it's a 2-pointer, and if you do end up putting 2 points in, it goes into 200% more often, which is cool. It's cool because there are things that will buff it, because you go down to Orbit Breaker, man. Every 20th shooting star calls down a full moon at 80% of its normal damage, which, I mean, it's really cool. It's amazing when it happens, and man, I am what? Okay, I'm starting to fall in love, and this is not good because I cannot get excited about another spec, man. I need to choose my main. And with Umbral Intensity right there, Eclipse damage bonus to Wrath and Starfire is 10% stronger, and you can put 2 points in, going all the way to 20%, which is really cool. And between all of these is the well-known choice of Twin Moon and Stellar Flare, which I guess is really good. Stellar Flare has been a single target dot. It's been always really awkward to put onto multiple targets because it is a casted dot, which is weird by definition. But Twin Moons is probably going to be mandatory, especially if you go into the Starfall on the right-hand side. This is a talent that you're probably not going to skip even if you do path towards AoE, because first of all, Moonfire deals 10% increased damage and also hits another enemy within 15 yards. Basically, to spread Moonfire in AoE, you have to cast half as many Moonfires so long as the targets are stacked together, which is really good. And there's a new talent called Waning Twilight, which is straight down from the choice node. It's a 2-pointer. When you have 3 periodic effects on a target, your damage and healing on them is increased by 4% for the first point, and if you put the 2 points in, it goes up to 8%, which again, this is really cool to see. Like the numbers aside is like relative. The cool part is that we're seeing more and more dot focus, which is something that a lot of people have been asking, man. A lot of people have been asking, and it's so cool. And if you go down from it, there's a new ability called Astral Communion. On a 1-minute cooldown, it instantly generates 75 astral power. Now, this is something that requires a bit more testing. However much we've played with Balance, we still need like really high difficult content to understand the functionality of generating astral power on demand, since Balance has never really felt like it was starving for astral power, and enabling this can be incredibly useful. And especially if you're in a situation where you're on cooldowns and you just want to spam star surges, you just blast a whole lot of star surges back to back, which I guess this is a fun thing to do. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, which seems like you're always going to have it whenever there's some cooldowns going around, which is pretty cool. Circle of Life and Death is actually also very close. It's still on the left-hand side. Your damage over time effects deal their damage in 25% less time, and your healing over time effects in 15% less time, which is basically what we know about Circle of Life and Death. It's really good. And obviously one more buffer to your dots. And we now have on the left side Denizen of the Dream, which is a new talent, at least in terms of the name. Your Moonfire and Sunfire have a chance to summon a fairy dragon to assist you in battle for 30 seconds. Now, this is similar. This reminds me similarly to the Demo Warlock Pit Lord, where there's no damage in the tooltip saying what it does, right? We just have to take the numbers in the game, and seeing as how the numbers in the game are subject to change, we're not exactly sure how valuable this will be until the final iteration of Balance Druid, and we will need, you know, proper content and made sure that, you know, these kind of things usually have a tendency to not be very well tuned whenever you have a situation where you summon a pet for a short amount of time. This particularly is not that short, it's 30 seconds. But when you summon usually a pet like this, they're usually very undertuned. We'll hope that, I mean, it's close to a Capstone as a Capstone can go. So I hope this feels really fun to play with. And the new Capstone is Friend of the Fae. When a Fury Dragon is summoned, your arcane and nature damage is increased by 6% for 30 seconds. Flat damage increase. Definitely not as interesting as the actual Fury Dragon. But then again, the Denizens of the Dream directly influences friend or foe, and arcane and nature damage is basically, you know, pretty much your damage profile. Or you can simply just take the other Capstone, which is Sundered Firmament. Basically the tier set, every other eclipse creates a Fury of Valoon at 25% effectiveness that follows your current target for 8 seconds, and Fury of Valoon is the all-time spell, you know, that does damage and generates astral power. And it's always really nice to just have it blast out of the nowhere. Now, on the middle side of the talent tree, and from Warrior of Valoon, like I mentioned before, it goes down into 2 paths. We already talked about Umbral Intensity. Umbral Embrace makes dealing astral damage have a chance to cause your next Wrath or Starfire to become Astral and deal 50 to 100% increased damage. It's kind of buggy in the terms of the tooltip right now, so we'll see exactly how this iteration starts to be all the way in the end. And this definitely is heavily affected by mastery. I would imagine this would be pretty cool to take and likely hard to not skip. I mean, it's 50% additional damage. It is on the generators though, which is something that we don't see very often for generators and spender specs, having their generators buffed to this extent. Solar Beam is the middle of the pack. It's your silence, and it still gets into, upgraded by light of the sun, which reduces the remaining cooldown of Solar Beam by 15 seconds when it interrupts your primary target, and it's likely always going to interrupt because it's a 1 minute cooldown. You're never not going to use it if you're not 100% sure that it's going to interrupt it. And it goes down into Stellar Inspiration. Star Surge has a 10% chance to apply Stellar Flare to the target, and Starfall has a 50% chance to extend Moonfire and Sunfire by 4 seconds. This is really cool. This could justify you not picking Stellar Flare, but it is only at 10%, so... But again, I mentioned before that you have the Astral Communion, where you just get a lot of astral power, and maybe by firing so many more Star Surges, you can guarantee a Stellar Flare application, and this could maybe justify it, at least in AoE, since you're probably going to be taking Twin Moons if you're ever going to contemplate the fact that you want uptime on Stellar Flare with this particular talent. Could be really cool. Now, there's also Nature's Balance, which was always a core mechanic, and it's pretty much the same. When in combat, you generate 1 astral power every 2 seconds, and while out of combat, you retain 50 astral power, or you basically adjust your astral power to remain at 50, even if it has to generate something. Celestial Alignment is smack dab in the middle again, which, once you activate it every 3 minutes for 20 seconds, it grants you both eclipses and 10% haste for the duration. And it goes down to the previous capsule that was all the way on the right hand side, which is Syzygy, whatever. Celestial Alignment blasts all enemies in a targeted area, which is something that I find amazing. Reminds me of Evoker. For astral damage, and applies Stellar Flare to all of them. Once again, the Stellar Flare mechanic application, or Primordial Arcanic Pulsar, which is also one of my all-time favorite balance mechanics, all the way from its Azurite trait in BFA to the legendary in Shadowlands, now makes it as a talent. And this capstone, this choice node is actually a kind of a dead end, which is a shame because you're definitely going to want one or the other. Going on the right hand side from Celestial Alignment, you have Soul of the Forest, which is Soul of the Forest, and on the other side is Nature's Grace. After an eclipse ends, you gain 15% haste for 6 seconds, obviously promoting you constantly going into and out of eclipses as often as you can. And you have further down, once you take one of these two, the choice node of Incarnation, chosen of a Loon, which I think is pretty much the same. It gives you an extra 10% crit, and that's pretty much it. And the other one being Convoke, which is actually probably my favorite Covenant ability out of all of them, bringing it back into a Dragonflight, which it's amazing. I love Convoke. What other thing is there to say about it? And you can take the upgrade, which prior I think it was a Capstone, a Loon's Guidance. Now it does the different thing depending on which choice node you've selected. For Incarnation, chosen of a Loon, it reduces the astral power cost of Star Surge by 10 and the astral power cost of Starfall by 15. And now that you can stack Starfall, this is amazing. And now that you can get the 10% chance of applying Stellar Flare with Star Surge, having its cost reduced is even cooler. While for Convoke, it reduces the cooldown by 50%, bringing Convoke down to 1 minute. And the number of spellcasts is reduced by 25%, so now by half, which is better. It's definitely a damage increase. And also on top of that, Convoke the Spirits has an increased chance to use an exceptional spell or ability. And since you're a Balance Druid, that will likely refer to Full Moon. So that's really, really, really cool. And going down from Convoke, on the left side, you have Astral Smolder, another new name on the talent list. Your critical strikes from Starfire and Wrath cause the target to languish for an additional 4% of your spell's damage over 4 seconds. And it's a 2-pointer, clearly, and once you put the second point in, it goes all the way to 8% of your spell's damage over 4 seconds. Now, this is obviously a dot. It's really interesting to know because we cannot really tell from the tooltip until we do like some proper theorycrafty sims. So we're probably going to wait for the Dream Grove big brains to do it, because who can do math here? I don't know. I can do math. If this actually ends up stacking, because if you do get a lot of crit and this actually stacks, crit might be a really good way to have like constant dot. It might stack or refresh its duration, but this is again more dots, more happy boomies. While on the opposite side to it, going down from Convoke and Incarn, is Entering Eclipse. It's Balance of All Things, which is the name of the old legendary in Shadowlands. Entering Eclipse increases your critical strike chance with arcane or nature spells by 16%, decreasing by 2% for every 1 second, and it's a 2-pointer, which means it will go to 24%. So that's, I mean, kind of slightly weird because it's diminishing returns, and it decreases by 3% every 1 second. Obviously this has been the main reason why Balance Druid was the king in single target in Season 1 of Shadowlands, and it's cool that it's coming as a return. The math of this is really weird, and unless you can actually take a pen and paper to math it out to see if it's worth it, it's not very obvious if it's good to put 2 points in, but obviously you start with more critical strike. It does degenerate a little quicker, but I think it degenerates at the same rate, so the same amount of seconds it will go back to 0, but you lose more per second. So it's like oh, you can take this, but I'll take more from you instead. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of this type of mechanic, but there you go, you have it there. And we didn't mention that Force of Nature is still way up at the talent tree, and it enables going down into the path into Star-Lord, which can actually be accessed from Nature's Balance as well. And Star-Lord makes it now so that when you Star Surge and Starfall, which I think it was in the prior build as well, you get 4% haste for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. It does not refresh, so you probably want to pull Astral Power and then just slap 3 back-to-back of one of these 2 consumers, which gets you to 12% extra haste, which is really good, especially if you're in a Celestial Alignment. You get 10% even more, so you might even not ever take haste as a stat, although it's always really good on balance. And also on the right-hand side, not going from Force of Nature, so you will have to take the Lunar Shrapnel that we mentioned before. There's a choice note of 2 talents, at least with new names. Rattle the Stars, Star Surge and Starfall reduce the cost of Star Surge and Starfall by 10% and increase their damage by 10% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. While Star Weaver, Star Surge has a 20% chance to make Starfall free. Starfall has a 40% chance to make Star Surge free. Like, these mechanics were in the talent tree before. They just were renamed and put in a choice node really high up here, which is, I guess, is really cool. It's neat mechanics, and I love talents that influence the mechanical effect of spells outside of just dealing more damage, which obviously normally translates into more damage in specific situations. So it's really cool. And going down from Star-Lord, once again, you have the Wild Mushroom that I mentioned before, which is a 30-second recharge. It has 3 charges, and it's really funny. I mean, it sounds like a really awesome druid spell. It doesn't really fit really well with balance, I assume. There's no like nature stuff. Everything is so arcane and stellar and cosmic that it feels a little bit out of place. I love it, don't get me wrong, it's actually really cool. And it goes down to Power of Goldren, which we had before. Star Surge has a chance to summon the Spirit of Goldren, which immediately deals damage in terms of arcane. And this is weird that it only affects Star Surge, while this being clearly on the AoE side. Although it's not very clear which side is AoE, which side is single target, because there's so many things that influence both. But the fact that Power of Goldren only affects Star Surge is a thing that you might want to skip if you're going full on Mythic Plus and you need every point of the talent tree for your build that you can possibly get. While at the same time, while Mushroom can go into Fungal Growth if you want to take the bottom Capstone and you don't want to take Goldren, and Fungal Growth makes enemies struck by a Wild Mushroom a damage for an additional 70% over 8 seconds dots again, and slowed by 50%, which can be pretty cool in Mythic Plus. More utility to balance. Let's go! And going down into this, there's the Capstone that I think it was prior, at least one of them was a Capstone. Fury of Elune, which we know, and New Moon, which we know once again. And they go down to 2 new Capstones. First of all, we have Radiant Moonlight all the way on the bottom right-hand side of the talent tree. Full Moon becomes Full Moon once more before resetting to New Moon. And Fury of Elune's cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds, depending on which one you take. I love Full Moon mechanics, and I will definitely be playing Radiant Moonlight. It sounds so crazy. It's really awesome. While Stellar Innervation, during Solar Eclipse, Sunfire generates 100% additional astral power. During Lunar Eclipse, Moonfire generates 100% astral power. So just more astral power generation. Now, 100% is debatable. I mean, it sounds good, but it's probably better in AoE. And I have to be honest with you, this is basically the first look at the talent tree. We're definitely testing these on the beta as prior to you watching the video clearly, and it's looking so amazing, man. Listen, as much of trashing that Balance gets from Marcelian for being a chicken spec, and as silly as you are being a fat chicken, the talent tree is looking really, really crazy, really amazing. I love all the new additions. The rearrangement of the existing talents is really cool. There are a lot less bloat. There's a lot less bloat overall. And so it's like, I kind of have to get this to get to that. They're just way more interesting nodes, and whoever is dealing with Balance in Dragonflight is doing an amazing work. I love it. Hoping that the numbers are also reflective of how really cool it is to go one side or the other. This could be one of the coolest range specs, range DPSers in Dragonflight, and has definitely made me change my mind on how Balance is looking for Dragonflight. But what about you? Isn't all of this looking really juicy, really cool, and really exciting to play? Because it is for me, and I gotta say, I might just become a fat chicken. But thank you for watching the video. Once again, if you want to support this content, you want to see more of it in the future and help us make this channel more amazing, consider becoming a Patreon in the link down below. Thank you, existing Patreons, for supporting us for all of these months and years and so on. We really, really appreciate it and love you guys so much. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.